Growing up, I always knew I was different from my sister Sarah. Not because of our personalities or interests, but because of the way our parents' eyes would light up whenever she walked into a room. It was like watching the sun rise, but that sunrise wasn't meant for me. Where are you watching from today? Comment down below. I remember the first time I really understood what being the other child meant. I was 8, and Sarah was 6. She had just finished a finger painting that looked like every other kid's finger painting, a mess of colors that could have been anything. But my parents? They acted like she'd just painted the Mona Lisa. They immediately hung it on the fridge, right over my perfect math test score. "Sarah's special," my mom would always say, usually right after I'd mentioned something I'd achieved. "She's artistic. She needs extra support to nurture her talent." Meanwhile, my straight A's in math and business classes were met with distracted nods and quick changes of subject. It was like speaking a language my family couldn't, or wouldn't, understand. The pattern continued through middle school. Sarah would draw something, and suddenly it was time to buy new art supplies. Expensive ones. When I asked for additional math workbooks or business magazines, I got the same response. Those things aren't priorities right now. But somehow, Sarah's third set of professional pastels that month was always a priority. I started to notice how our family photos told the story too. Sarah front and center, usually mid-artistic gesture, while I stood awkwardly to the side, holding whatever award or certificate I'd earned that week. Those certificates might as well have been invisible. They never made it to the walls like Sarah's artwork did. The thing about being the practical child is that you're expected to just understand. Understand why your sister needs those $200 special brushes. Understand why your academic achievements don't deserve the same celebration as her half-finished paintings. Understand why being artistic somehow trumps being reliable, hardworking, or ambitious. I remember one particular parent-teacher conference in high school. My economics teacher was raving about my potential, talking about how I could have a future in finance or business. My parents nodded politely, but their eyes kept drifting to their phones, where Sarah was sending them pictures of her latest art project. They left early to attend her school art show, leaving my teacher mid-sentence. That night, I sat in my room, surrounded by my business competition trophies that never made it out of their boxes, and I made a promise to myself. If they couldn't see my value, I would prove it. Not just to them, but to myself. I started reading everything I could about business, entrepreneurship, and investing. While Sarah was downstairs getting praise for her artistic vision, I was upstairs learning about market trends and startup strategies. The irony wasn't lost on me when I started making money from my first small business ventures in high school, selling customized study guides to other students. My parents called it too commercial. But when Sarah needed new supplies or art classes, guess whose commercial money they had no problem accepting. But here's the thing about being overlooked. It teaches you to be self-reliant. While Sarah grew dependent on our parents' constant approval and support, I was learning to trust my own judgment, to validate my own choices. I didn't need their applause to know I was good at what I did. Their indifference became my motivation. Looking back now, I can see how those early years shaped everything that would come later. Every dismissed achievement, every overlooked accomplishment, every time they chose Sarah's artistic whims over my practical success, it was all building towards something bigger than any of us could have imagined. But at the time, I was just a kid who was really good with numbers, living in the shadow of a sister who could barely count her art supplies but was somehow worth more attention than I'd ever be. Little did they know, those math skills they dismissed, that business sense they ignored, it would end up being worth millions. But we're not there yet. First, we need to talk about college, and the moment I finally learned to say no to my family's demands. The acceptance letter from Wharton Business School sat on my desk for 3 days before I dared to show my parents. Not because I wasn't proud. Getting a full scholarship was everything I'd worked for. But I knew. Somehow, I just knew this achievement would become another battlefield in our family's ongoing war of priorities. I chose a Sunday dinner to share my news. Sarah was showing off her latest portfolio, and my parents were doing their usual routine of gasping at every brushstroke, as if they were seeing colors for the first time. I waited for a pause in their praise and cleared my throat. I got into Wharton, full scholarship. The silence that followed wasn't the proud kind. My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. My father's eyes darted between me and Sarah, who had suddenly become very interested in rearranging her peas. Then came the response I'd been dreading. "Oh, honey," my mother started, using that tone she reserved for explaining why Sarah's needs always came first. "That's nice. But have you heard Sarah's news? She's decided art school isn't the right fit for her creative spirit. She wants to pursue her art independently." I stared at my sister, who had dropped out of art school after just 1 semester. The same art school our parents had drained their savings to pay for. The same art school she had insisted was essential to her future just months ago. "It's too structured," Sarah explained, waving her hand dismissively. "Real artists need freedom to explore their vision. I can't be confined by their rules and their deadlines." She said deadlines like it was a dirty word. Then came the bomb I'd been waiting for. My father cleared his throat, put on his reasonable face, the one that usually preceded an unreasonable request. "Speaking of your scholarship, your mother and I have been thinking, since you won't need that money for school, maybe we could use it to support Sarah's independent art career. She needs a proper studio, supplies, and time to develop her portfolio without the constraints of formal education." The room started spinning. Years of straight A's, perfect SAT scores, countless hours of study and preparation. All of it was supposed to become just another sacrifice on the altar of Sarah's artistic dreams. "The scholarship money goes directly to the school," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's not cash I can just hand over." "Well, surely there's a way to get it redirected," my mother pressed. "Or maybe you could take out student loans instead. Family has to support each other, sweetheart." Sarah's at a crucial point in her artistic journey. That's when something inside me snapped. Not dramatically, not with tears or shouting. It was more like a quiet click, the sound of a door finally locking. "No." The word hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's mouth dropped open. She wasn't used to hearing that word in our house, at least not directed at her needs. "What do you mean, no?" my mother asked, as if I'd started speaking in tongues. "I mean no. I earned this scholarship. I worked for it. I'm going to use it to get my degree. Sarah's artistic journey is her responsibility, not mine." My father leaned forward, his face darkening. "Now listen here, young lady. In this family, we sacrifice for each other. Your sister has a gift. And I have a future," I cut in. "One that I've planned and worked for. I'm not giving that up. Not this time." Sarah burst into tears, her usual strategy when she wasn't getting her way. "You're so selfish. You've always been jealous of my talent. Just because you can't create anything beautiful doesn't mean you have to ruin my chances." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. 20 years old, crying at our parents' dinner table because her sibling refused to fund her latest whim. This was what their constant coddling had created. Someone who genuinely believed her dreams were everyone else's responsibility. "I'm going to Wharton," I said, standing up from the table. "I'm going to get my degree. And for the first time in my life, I'm going to put my future first. You can all think I'm selfish. That's fine. but I'm done being the family ATM. As I walked upstairs to my room, I could hear my mother consoling Sarah, promising they'd find another way to fund her dreams. My father called after me about family duty and responsibility, but something had changed. That single no had broken some spell, shattered some invisible chain I'd been carrying my whole life. That night, as I lay in bed, I started planning. Not just for college, but for everything that would come after. I knew this was just the beginning of a war, one where I'd have to fight for every inch of independence. But for the first time, I was ready for battle. Little did I know, this was just the first skirmish. The real fight would begin when I started my own business, right there in my dorm room, between classes and midnight study sessions. But that's another story, one that would change everything. My dorm room became my first office. While other students were decorating their walls with posters and fairy lights, I had spreadsheets and business plans taped up everywhere. My roommate thought I was crazy, especially when I started working night shifts at the campus coffee shop while maintaining a full course load. But I had a vision, and more importantly, I had something to prove. The idea came to me during my business statistics class. Students were struggling with the complex financial modeling software we were required to use, and the university's tutorials were outdated and confusing. I started creating simplified guide videos, breaking down the concepts into digestible pieces. When I posted the first one online, I expected maybe a few views from my classmates. Within a week, I had students from other universities messaging me, asking for more content. That's when it hit me. There was a massive gap between what universities were teaching and what students actually needed to understand. My first real business was born. FinTech Fundamentals, a platform creating accessible financial technology tutorials for students and young professionals. Of course, my family had their own opinions about my little hobby, as they called it. During one of our increasingly rare phone calls, my mother barely acknowledged my growing subscriber count before launching into Sarah's latest news. "Your sister has decided to become a full-time painter," she announced, as if declaring Sarah had discovered the cure for cancer. "She says she's ready to dedicate herself completely to her art. Your father and I are converting the garage into a proper studio for her." I could hear the sound of power tools in the background. "Are you using your retirement money for this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Well, Sarah needs the right environment to create. You know how sensitive artists are to their surroundings. We're just doing what any supportive parents would do." What about supporting their other daughter who was working 60-hour weeks while maintaining a 4.0 GPA? But I didn't say that. Instead, I focused on building my business between classes, during lunch breaks, and in the quiet hours of my night shift when the coffee shop was empty. Every dollar I earned went straight back into the business. I learned to code from free online resources, stayed up late editing videos, and spent my weekends writing content. My platform started growing, slowly at first, then faster as word spread through campus finance departments. Then came the evening I'll never forget. I was in the middle of filming a tutorial when Sarah called, sobbing. She'd just announced her first gallery showing, in our parents' garage, of course. "You have to come," she wailed. "I'm finally ready to share my vision with the world. Mom and Dad have invested so much in this. They even took out a second mortgage to fund it." I nearly dropped my phone. "They did what?" "Well, obviously I needed professional lighting, and gallery quality frames aren't cheap. Plus, I had to hire a professional photographer to document everything. This is my big break." I looked at my own setup, a secondhand laptop, a $30 ring light I'd bought on sale, and a white sheet thumbtacked to the wall as my background. Everything I'd built myself, with nothing but my own sweat and student coffee shop wages. "I can't make it, Sarah. I have midterms that week, plus I'm launching a new series of tutorials." The silence on the other end was arctic. You're choosing your little YouTube videos over your own sister's art debut? God, you really are heartless, aren't you? After she hung up, I sat in my makeshift studio, surrounded by my business plans and tutorial scripts. My sister was right about one thing. I was choosing this over her. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely no guilt about it. That night, I filmed 3 more tutorials. While my parents were draining their future to fund Sarah's dreams, I was building mine from the ground up. Every view, every subscription, every positive comment was proof that I'd made the right choice. My business wasn't just about making money anymore. It had become my declaration of independence. Every tutorial I created was a statement. I don't need your approval. I don't need your support. I can build something valuable all on my own. By the end of my first semester, FinTech Fundamentals had paid for all my textbooks and was starting to generate a modest but steady income. It wasn't millions, not yet, but it was mine. Every penny had been earned through my own effort, my own vision, my own sacrifice. Sarah's garage gallery opening came and went. According to my mother's increasingly desperate texts, only a handful of people showed up, and no paintings sold. But they were sure the next showing would be different. They just needed to invest in better marketing, better venues, better everything. Meanwhile, I was about to learn my first lesson in dealing with family and business success. Never let them know how well you're really doing. Because the moment they caught wind of my growing success, everything would change. But that's the next chapter of this story. And trust me, it gets much more interesting. Success has a funny way of bringing out people's true colors. By my junior year, FinTech Fundamentals had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We had over 100,000 subscribers, and my tutorials were being used in university classrooms across the country. I was making more money than most recent graduates, all while still attending classes. I should have known better than to mention any of this during our monthly family video call. "That's wonderful, honey," my mother said, with that particular tone that always preceded a request. "You know, speaking of success, Sarah's art career is at a crucial turning point right now." I watched my sister's face appear on screen, wearing the same expectant expression she'd had since childhood, the one that meant she was about to ask for something expensive. "I've been thinking," Sarah announced, as if sharing a divine revelation. "My art needs to speak to the modern digital age. I want to start creating NFTs and digital installations. I just need some startup capital for the equipment." My father jumped in before I could respond. "Your sister has done extensive research. She needs about $50,000 for the initial setup. Since your little online business is doing so well." "Little online business?" I repeated, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. "Do you even know what I do?" "Oh, sweetie, you make those helpful little videos," my mother said dismissively. "And we're so proud of you for that. But this is about real art. Sarah's art could change the world." I looked at my sister, who had never shown the slightest interest in technology before this moment. "Sarah, do you even know what an NFT is?" "I don't need to know the technical details," she huffed. "I'm an artist. I just need the right tools to express my vision. And since you're clearly doing well with your tutorial things, it's time you supported the family's real creative talent." That's when my father dropped the bomb that would change everything. "We've already promised Sarah's art collective that you'd fund their new digital initiative. They're expecting the money by the end of the month." The world stopped for a moment. "You did what?" "Well, we knew you'd want to help," my mother said brightly. "Real family supports each other no matter what. Remember how we supported you?" I almost laughed. "Supported me? When? When you ignored my achievements? When you tried to make me give up my scholarship? When you dismissed my business as Little videos? Now don't be dramatic, my father warned. We're just asking you to be a good sister. Sarah needs this opportunity. Her last 3 gallery showings haven't produced any sales, but this digital art thing is guaranteed to... Nothing is guaranteed. I cut in. Except that I won't be funding this. Not now, not ever. Sarah's face crumpled into her practiced cry. But I already told everyone. The collective is counting on this. You're destroying my dreams just because you're jealous of my talent. Jealous? The word hit me like a slap. I built my business from nothing. No parental funding, no converted garage, no second mortgages. I worked night shifts and lived on ramen noodles while you were getting daily deliveries of art supplies. And now that I'm successful, you think you're entitled to my money? We're family, my mother insisted. Family means sharing our blessings. No, I said, feeling eerily calm. Family should mean supporting each other's growth, celebrating each other's genuine achievements, and respecting each other's boundaries. This isn't family. This is parasitic. The silence that followed was deafening. How dare you? My father finally sputtered. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Name one time you supported my dreams the way you support Sarah's. One time you invested in my future the way you invest in her endless new beginnings. They couldn't answer. Of course they couldn't. The answer is no. I continued. I won't give Sarah $50,000. I won't give her 50 cents. My business isn't your ATM, and my success isn't a resource for you to plunder. If you don't help your sister, my mother said, her voice shaking with either rage or tears, I couldn't tell which, don't bother calling us again. Real family stands together. I looked at their faces on my screen. My mother's righteous anger, my father's disappointment, Sarah's calculated tears, and felt something final click into place. You're right, I said. Real family does stand together. But this isn't real family. This is emotional extortion, and I'm done with it. Goodbye. I ended the call before they could respond. Then I blocked their numbers, their emails, and their social media accounts. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. Sometimes, choosing yourself means walking away from the people who never chose you. Little did I know, this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. My family would try increasingly desperate tactics to regain control, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. The daughter they never valued had become the woman they couldn't manipulate anymore. They say the moment you stop accepting toxic behavior is the moment people show you who they really are. I didn't have to wait long after blocking my family's numbers to discover just how true that was. It started with emails from distant relatives, then social media messages from family friends, all saying the same thing. Your parents want to talk. It's important. What I didn't expect was to find them sitting in my favorite campus coffee shop, the same one where I'd worked night shifts to build my business. My mother, father, and Sarah were arranged around a table like a tribunal, with an empty chair clearly meant for me. They'd even brought our family pastor along, probably hoping his presence would make me more receptive to their manipulation. Sweetheart, my mother started, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. We're here because we love you. We're worried about the choices you're making. I remained standing, my laptop bag still slung over my shoulder. The choice to not bankrupt myself funding Sarah's latest whim? See? Sarah burst out, turning to the pastor. She's so bitter, so jealous. This is exactly what we were talking about. The pastor cleared his throat. Your family tells me you've been struggling with priorities lately. That material success has perhaps clouded your judgment about what really matters. I almost laughed. Material success? You mean the business I built from nothing while working minimum wage? The one that succeeded because I provided actual value to people? Now, dear, my father cut in, nobody's saying your little videos aren't nice, but family obligations come first. Sarah's art could touch millions of lives if she just had the proper funding. Which you expect me to provide, I finished. Because her last 3 funded projects worked out so well. My mother's face hardened. We didn't come here to argue about Sarah's past projects. We came here because you're destroying this family with your selfishness. Selfishness? The word hung in the air between us. Is that what you call it when I refuse to be your personal bank? Sarah stood up dramatically, tears already flowing. You're destroying my dreams. I told the whole art collective you would fund our digital initiative. Do you know how humiliating it was to tell them my own sister refused to support my vision? Almost as humiliating as working night shifts while watching your parents drain their retirement to fund your failed gallery showings, I shot back. The pastor raised his hands placatingly. Perhaps we could all take a moment to... No, I cut him off. I know exactly what this is. This isn't an intervention. This is a shakedown dressed up as family concern. My father's face darkened. Young lady, you are walking a very dangerous line. We are your family. We have supported you. When? I challenged. When did you ever support me the way you support Sarah? Name one time. One single time you invested in my dreams the way you invest in hers. The silence was deafening. That's different, my mother finally said. Sarah is sensitive, special. She needs to grow up, I finished. And so do you. I'm done being your backup plan. Done being the responsible one who's expected to clean up everyone else's messes. Done watching you destroy your own financial future because Sarah can't face reality. If you walk away now, my mother's voice shook with what I recognized as her preparation for her final manipulation tactic. Don't ever expect to be welcomed back. If you choose your money over your family... I'm not choosing money over family, I interrupted. I'm choosing my self-respect over your manipulation. I'm choosing my future over Sarah's endless demands. I'm choosing reality over the fantasy world you've all been living in. I looked at each of them. My father's rigid disapproval, my mother's calculated distress, Sarah's practiced tears, the pastor's uncomfortable shifting, and felt nothing but relief. I'm walking away now, I said quietly. Not from family, because you stopped being that a long time ago. I'm walking away from this endless cycle of guilt and manipulation. Don't contact me again. Don't send others to contact me. It's over. You'll regret this, Sarah called after me as I turned to leave. When I'm a famous artist, you'll wish you'd been part of my journey. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. No, Sarah. I'll be too busy building my empire to notice. As I walked across campus, my phone buzzed with messages from flying monkeys. Family friends, distant relatives, even my mother's bridge club members, all expressing their shock at my cruelty to my poor sister. I blocked them all, one by one, feeling lighter with each tap of the screen. That evening, I threw myself into my work with renewed focus. While my family was probably still sitting in that coffee shop, plotting their next attempt at manipulation, I was planning my company's expansion. They thought cutting me off was a punishment, but they'd actually given me the greatest gift of all: freedom. Little did they know, this punishment would be the catalyst for my biggest success yet. Sometimes losing a toxic family is the first step to finding your true strength. They say success is the best revenge, but I wasn't thinking about revenge during those next 2 years. I was too busy working. After cutting ties with my family, I channeled all that emotional energy into growing my business. FinTech Fundamentals wasn't just a tutorial platform anymore. It was becoming an empire. I expanded into multiple markets, starting with corporate training programs. Major financial institutions were paying premium prices for customized versions of my tutorials. The same clear, accessible approach that helped college students was now helping professionals stay current with rapidly evolving financial technology. My life became a careful balance of finishing my degree and scaling the business. I lived like a monk. No parties, no spring break trips, no expensive clothes. Every dollar of profit went straight back into the company. My roommate thought I was crazy, especially when I turned down a spring break trip to Cancun to work on launching our mobile app. "You're already making good money," she said one night, watching me work at 2 a.m. "Why not enjoy it a little?" I looked up from my laptop, where I was reviewing the latest app development progress. "This isn't about money," I told her. "It's about building something that can't be taken away or manipulated." Through mutual friends, I heard bits and pieces about my family. Sarah's art career was following its predictable pattern. Grand announcements followed by expensive failures. She'd abandoned digital art after realizing it required actual technical skills, declaring that NFTs were too commercial and beneath her artistic integrity. My parents, still enabling her every whim, had refinanced their house again to fund her latest venture, a series of interactive experiential installations that mostly consisted of random objects glued to canvas. The local art scene was apparently not ready for her revolutionary vision. Meanwhile, I was expanding into international markets. We launched tutorials in Spanish, then Mandarin, then Hindi. Every new market brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. I hired my first employees, real professionals with experience in education and finance, not family members looking for handouts. I lived frugally despite the growing success. My apartment was small but functional. My car was reliable but not flashy, and my clothes came from outlet stores. Every luxury I denied myself became an investment in the company's future. Then came the call that tested my resolve. It wasn't from my family directly. They'd learned that lesson. Instead, it was from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who'd always been slightly more rational than the rest. "Your parents are struggling," she said without preamble. "The last refinance was a mistake. They might lose the house." I continued typing code as I listened. "Let me guess. Sarah's latest art project didn't pay off?" "She had a show last week," Linda sighed. "No sales, again. But that's not why I'm calling. Your parents, they're not young anymore. This stress isn't good for them. And you're doing so well." "Stop," I cut in. "I know where this is going, and the answer is no." "They're your parents," she pressed. "And Sarah? Well, she's Sarah. She'll never be able to support herself. Someone has to—" "No," I said firmly. "Someone doesn't have to. They chose this path. They chose to enable her delusions instead of encouraging her to develop real skills. That's not my responsibility to fix." "You're their only hope." Linda tried one last time. Family should support growth, not enable destruction," I replied. "I'm building something real here, Aunt Linda. Something that helps people, that creates actual value. I won't sacrifice that to enable more magical thinking." After hanging up, I threw myself back into work with even more determination. That night, we launched our advanced certification program, a series of professional-level courses that would become our biggest revenue stream yet. A week later, I saw Sarah's latest art show advertised in the local paper. The headline read, "Revolutionary Artist Challenges Conventional Reality." The photo showed an empty gallery with a few confused-looking visitors staring at what appeared to be random household items spray-painted gold. But I didn't feel smug or satisfied. I felt nothing at all. I was too focused on our upcoming expansion into the European market to care about Sarah's latest attempt at artistic relevance. My company had grown beyond my wildest dreams. But I wasn't done. Not even close. While my family was still trapped in their cycle of enablement and failure, I was building something that would last. Something real. And the best part? I did it all without their support, their guidance, or their manipulation. Every success was mine, earned through hard work and smart decisions. Every milestone was achieved on my own terms. The girl who was never good enough for their attention had become the woman who didn't need it anymore. But the real validation, the true victory, was still to come. Because sometimes, success isn't just about making money. It's about proving that everything they dismissed about you was exactly what made you unstoppable. The day I hit my first million in revenue, I was alone in my office, staring at the financial reports in disbelief. It wasn't just the number that stunned me. It was what it represented. Every digit in that seven-figure sum was a direct result of my own decisions, my own work, my own vision. No handouts, no family connections, no safety net, just pure, unrelenting determination. I celebrated by buying my first house, paying cash. It wasn't a mansion, just a modest 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood. But as I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, I felt something I'd never experienced in my family home. Peace. This space was mine, earned through my own efforts, free from the weight of others' expectations or demands. The real estate agent had been shocked when I made the cash offer. Usually, someone your age would need a cosigner, she'd said, checking my ID again. Or at least, a mortgage. I don't do debt, I told her simply. Another lesson learned from watching my parents refinance their home repeatedly to fund Sarah's artistic adventures. Speaking of Sarah, I heard through the grapevine that her art studio, the converted garage that had cost my parents their retirement savings, had become a storage unit for unsold paintings. Hundreds of canvases, each representing thousands of dollars in investments, gathering dust while she pursued her latest passion: interpretive dance. She's discovered her true calling, my cousin reported during an accidental run-in at the grocery store. Your parents are converting their basement into a dance studio. They're saying this time it's different. I nodded politely and changed the subject. It wasn't different. It would never be different. The only thing that had changed was my involvement in their cycle of enablement and failure. That same week, I received an invitation to speak at a major financial technology conference. The topic? Building a $1 million education platform from scratch. The irony wasn't lost on me. My little videos had grown into something my family couldn't have imagined. As I prepared my presentation, I thought about all the times my achievements had been dismissed, minimized, or ignored in favor of Sarah's latest artistic endeavor. Now I was being asked to share my expertise with industry leaders while Sarah's paintings collected dust in our parents' garage. But success brought its own challenges. News of my accomplishments had reached my parents, and they were facing their own financial reckoning. Years of supporting Sarah's various artistic ventures had left them with a mountain of debt and a house worth less than they owed on it. They're talking about reverse mortgages, my Aunt Linda informed me during another attempted intervention. They're desperate. If you could just help them get back on their feet. I cut her off before she could finish. They're not in this position because of bad luck or circumstances beyond their control. They're here because of choices. Choices they're still making. How is Sarah's dance studio coming along? Linda's silence was answer enough. That evening, I walked through my new house, running my hands along the walls I'd paid for with my own success. In my home office, I had framed the first tutorial script I'd ever written, not for nostalgia, but as a reminder of where it all started. Next to it hung my company's first $1 million revenue report. I thought about my parents' house, with its walls covered in Sarah's unsold artwork, each piece a testament to dreams untethered from reality. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. My success was built on providing real value to real people, while their struggles stemmed from endlessly funding empty promises. The next morning, I received an email from a young woman who'd used my platform to land her dream job in fintech. "Your tutorials changed my life," she wrote. "You made something that seemed impossible feel achievable." That email meant more to me than any gallery opening or dance recital ever could. I was building something that actually helped people, that created tangible, positive change in the world. No gold spray paint required. As my company continued to grow, I started planning for the future. Not just my company's future, but my own. I set up retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and emergency funds. All the things my parents had sacrificed on the altar of Sarah's artistic ambitions. The girl who was never creative enough for her family's attention had created something worth millions. The daughter they dismissed as too practical had built a practical solution that helped thousands of people achieve their dreams. But this was just the beginning. As I reviewed plans for our next expansion phase, I knew the real test was still to come. Because success has a way of bringing people out of the woodwork, especially those who dismissed you on your way up. And my family? They were about to learn just how successful their practical daughter had become. Success has a way of changing how people see you. I learned this firsthand when my company was featured in a prominent business magazine. The article wasn't just about our financial success, it was about how we'd revolutionized financial technology education. My face was on the cover, smiling confidently next to the headline, "The 26-year-old who's changing how we learn finance." The first sign that my family had seen the article came in the form of a carefully worded email from my mother. No mention of Sarah's art or dance career. No subtle hints about financial support. Just congratulations and a suggestion that perhaps it's time to put the past behind us. I didn't respond, but I knew it wouldn't end there. It never did with them. Sure enough, a week later, a large package arrived at my office. Inside were several of Sarah's paintings, the ones that had been collecting dust in the garage. A note attached read, "Your success has made me realize how petty our differences were. I want you to have these as a gesture of reconciliation. They'll be worth millions one day. Love, Sarah." I had to admire the audacity. She wasn't just attempting reconciliation. She was trying to establish herself as an investment opportunity. The same old Sarah, just with a new angle. The paintings were followed by a lengthy email from my father, full of phrases like family healing and moving forward together. Carefully worded paragraphs about how proud they were of my unexpected success and how they'd always believed in my potential. Funny how that belief only manifested after I was on a magazine cover. But it was the line about making things right that revealed their true intentions. Making things right, in their world, had always meant one thing: conforming to their expectations. I didn't have to wait long to discover what those expectations were. My mother's bridge club friend, now a real estate agent, happened to run into me at my favorite coffee shop. "Your parents are so proud," she gushed, sliding uninvited into my booth. "They've been telling everyone about their successful daughter. Though it's such a shame about their financial situation, especially with Sarah's new interpretive dance career requiring so much investment." I sipped my coffee, letting her ramble. The strategy was transparent. Use mutual acquaintances to lay the groundwork for their next attempt at accessing my resources. That evening, Sarah herself called from an unknown number. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice carrying that familiar tone of practiced sincerity. "I realize now that I might have been difficult in the past, but seeing your success has inspired me. I want to combine my art with your business acumen." "You mean you want my money?" I interrupted. God, you're still so bitter, she snapped, mask slipping instantly. This is exactly why Mom and Dad are hesitant to accept your apology. I almost laughed. My apology? For what? Being successful without their help? For abandoning your family? For being selfish? For flaunting your money while we've struggled? Those paintings I sent you, they're worth at least... I cut her off. Those paintings are in the lobby of a local community center. I donated them. Maybe someone there will appreciate them. The screech that followed was probably heard in 3 states. You donated my masterpieces? Do you know what they're worth? Exactly what someone is willing to pay for them, I replied calmly, which so far has been $0. The next day, my parents launched their final offensive. A formal letter arrived, thick with legal jargon about family obligations and moral responsibilities. They were willing to forgive my past selfishness in exchange for my investment in the family's artistic endeavors. I wrote a single line in response. The paintings have been donated. Do not contact me again. Their reply came in the form of a social media barrage. Posts about ungrateful children and money-changing people. Sarah shared long, melodramatic posts about artistic souls being crushed by capitalist greed. Friends and relatives took sides, most backing my family's narrative of the cold-hearted daughter who'd abandoned her creative sister. I didn't engage. Instead, I focused on our company's latest expansion. We were launching a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in finance, something that would create real, tangible opportunities for people who actually wanted to learn. The paintings, meanwhile, brightened up the community center's walls. The director had been thrilled to receive them, though she did ask one question that made me smile. The artist's signature says, Sarah, any relation? No, I replied. No relation at all. Because that's the thing about toxic family members. Sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to acknowledge that the relationship they claim isn't the relationship that exists. They weren't trying to reconcile with me. They were trying to reconcile with my success. And those are 2 very different things. They say success breeds success, but what they don't tell you is how quickly it can happen. Within months of being featured in that business magazine, FinTech Fundamentals had gone international. We weren't just teaching college students anymore. We were training employees at major banks in London, consulting for firms in Singapore, and launching custom programs for financial institutions in Dubai. The Forbes 30 Under 30 nomination came as a surprise. The email arrived while I was in Tokyo, closing a deal with one of Japan's largest financial institutions. My team had forwarded it with a dozen exclamation marks. Boss, you're going to be on the list. I remember sitting in my hotel room that night, looking out over the Tokyo skyline, thinking about how far I'd come from that coffee shop night shift. My company now employed over 200 people across 3 continents. We had offices in New York, London, and Singapore. The little videos my family had dismissed had grown into an empire. Of course, news of the Forbes recognition made its way back home. My Aunt Linda, who'd apparently appointed herself the family messenger, called to tell me that Sarah had seen the announcement and had something to say. She's realized that maybe she doesn't understand the modern art market, Linda explained hopefully. She thinks combining her artistic vision with your business expertise could revolutionize. No, I said simply, ending the call. Later that day, I received a series of texts from Sarah herself. Society just doesn't understand real art, she complained. That's why I'm moving back home. Mom and Dad get me. They understand that true artists need support. I didn't respond, but I did some checking. My parents' house, once a comfortable suburban home, had become a monument to failed artistic ambitions. The converted garage studio was now a storage unit for unsold paintings. The basement dance studio, barely used, had caused foundation issues they couldn't afford to fix. Every room was filled with the physical evidence of enabling Sarah's dreams at the expense of reality. Meanwhile, I was being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal about our latest innovation, an artificial intelligence-driven platform that adapted to each user's learning style. We were revolutionizing how people learned about finance, making it accessible to everyone, not just those who could afford expensive degrees. "Your success story is inspiring," the journalist said during our interview. "Did you have a lot of family support starting out?" I smiled diplomatically. "I learned early on that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself." The article came out a week later. Someone, probably my mother, must have sent it to Sarah because she posted a lengthy rant on social media about how some people sacrifice their souls for money and how true artists suffer for their vision. I had my assistant mute those accounts. I was too busy reviewing expansion plans to engage with Sarah's latest attempt at martyrdom. We were about to launch in South America, and I had meetings with potential partners in Brazil and Argentina. That's when I received the most surprising news yet. My parents were facing possible bankruptcy, not because of the market or bad luck or any external factor, simply because they'd finally reached the end of their financial rope after years of funding Sarah's artistic pursuits. "The bank is threatening foreclosure," Linda informed me during another unsolicited call. Sarah's latest project, well, it required some significant investment. Your parents took out a personal loan, but with the interest rates... I cut her off. "Let me guess, Sarah's project didn't pan out?" "She says the world isn't ready for her vision," Linda sighed. "She's moved back home permanently. Says she needs time to focus on her art without the pressure of materialistic concerns like rent or bills." The irony was almost too perfect. While I was building a global empire that helped people achieve real financial success, my sister was still living in a fantasy world where someone else would always foot the bill for her dreams. That evening, I was reviewing applications for our company's scholarship program when an email came in from Sarah. The subject line read, "A business proposition." Inside was a lengthy explanation of how she planned to disrupt the art world with a series of NFTs. If only someone would invest in her vision. I moved the email to my spam folder without reading further. On my desk was the contract for our newest venture, a partnership with a major university to create an affordable online finance degree program. Real education, real opportunities, real results. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. While Sarah was still trying to sell dreams, I was building realities. While my parents faced bankruptcy from funding her fantasies, I was helping thousands of people achieve genuine financial independence. Success, I'd learned, wasn't just about making money. It was about creating value, about building something that actually helped people improve their lives. And no amount of artistic vision could compete with that kind of real-world impact. They say success breeds success, but what they don't tell you is how quickly it can happen. Within months of being featured in that business magazine, FinTech Fundamentals had gone international. We weren't just teaching college students anymore. We were training employees at major banks in London, consulting for firms in Singapore, and launching custom programs for financial institutions in Dubai. The day my company hit a $50 million valuation, I was in a meeting with potential investors who wanted to take us public. The numbers on the screen were staggering. Not just the valuation, but the impact we'd had. Over 1 million students had used our platform to land jobs in finance. Thousands of professionals had advanced their careers through our programs. We weren't just making money, we were changing lives. That same day, I received a certified letter from a local law firm. My family, it seemed, had decided to try a new approach. The letter claimed emotional abandonment and familial financial responsibility, arguing that my success created an obligation to support my parents and sister. They were seeking regular financial support and a substantial stake in my company for their role in my development. I handed the letter to my legal team without even finishing it. They responded with a brief cease and desist letter, copying local media outlets that had covered my company's success. The message was clear. Any further attempts at legal harassment would become very public, very quickly. The local newspaper ran the story anyway. Tech CEO sued by family after rising from coffee shop worker to millionaire. The comments section was flooded with people sharing similar stories of family members coming out of the woodwork after their success. But it was one comment that caught my eye. If they didn't support the dream, they don't deserve to share in the reality. The lawsuit was thrown out in record time. The judge's comments were particularly scathing. The court cannot and will not enforce an obligation where none exists. Financial success does not create a duty to support capable adults who refuse to support themselves. Sarah's response was predictable. She launched a social media campaign about how money had corrupted her sister's soul and how true artists suffer while capitalists prosper. She even started a GoFundMe to save her parents from the greed of corporate America, conveniently forgetting that their financial troubles stemmed from funding her artistic ventures. The campaign raised $157 before being taken down for misleading information. Meanwhile, I was channeling my energy into something constructive. We launched a youth business education program, providing free financial literacy courses to high school students. The scholarship fund we created would help underprivileged students pursue degrees in business and finance. During the press conference announcing these initiatives, a reporter asked about the lawsuit. "Your family claims they supported your early development. How do you respond to that?" I looked directly into the cameras. Success isn't just about who you are or where you came from. It's about the value you create and the lives you impact. Our scholarship program isn't about me or my story. It's about creating opportunities for people who want to work for their success, not inherit or demand it. The next day, my mother sent a lengthy email about how I was shaming the family and embarrassing Sarah by publicly discussing our private matters. She demanded I make a public statement acknowledging their support and contributions to my success. Instead, I published our scholarship program's first success story. A young woman from a low-income family who'd used our platform to become the first person in her family to attend college. She was now working at a major financial firm, helping other families build sustainable wealth. That story went viral, leading to an outpouring of similar testimonials from our users. People shared how our platform had helped them escape poverty, advance their careers, or build better futures for their families. Real success stories, built on hard work and determination, not entitlement and endless demands. The contrast between these stories and my family's behavior couldn't have been clearer. While they were trying to legally extort money from me, I was helping others create their own success stories. While Sarah was crying about the world not understanding her art, our platform was helping people understand the practical skills they needed to succeed. The final irony came when one of our scholarship recipients launched a successful financial advisory firm in our hometown. They specialized in helping artists manage their money and build sustainable careers. When Sarah inevitably heard about it and tried to schedule a consultation, she was turned away. "We work with artists who want to build real businesses," they told her, "not those looking for handouts." I kept the screenshot of that email. Not out of spite, but as a reminder that success built on real value will always outlast success demanded through obligation or guilt. My company's $50 million valuation wasn't just a number. It was proof that helping others achieve their dreams is more valuable than funding someone else's delusions. The lawsuit's dismissal wasn't just a legal victory. It was the final word in a story that had been writing itself since my childhood. Success isn't an obligation to those who dismissed your potential. It's a responsibility to help others who, like you once did, just need a real opportunity to prove their worth. They say living well is the best revenge, but I've learned it's not about revenge at all. It's about building something so meaningful that the past becomes irrelevant. 5 years after cutting ties with my family, I found myself mentoring young entrepreneurs who reminded me of my younger self. Driven, determined, and often dealing with people who didn't believe in their vision. My company had become more than just a financial education platform. It was an incubator for dreams. We'd launched a mentorship program specifically designed for first-generation entrepreneurs, people who, like me, had to build their success from scratch without family support or connections. That's when Sarah launched her most ambitious project yet, a GoFundMe campaign titled "One Last Chance at Artistic Greatness." The description was pure Sarah. After years of society's rejection of true artistic vision, I'm asking for support for one final opportunity to show the world what real art looks like. The campaign's goal was $100,000. It raised $235, mostly from our parents' bridge club friends. I didn't contribute, but I did something better. I doubled the funding for our entrepreneurship grant program, focusing specifically on artists who wanted to build sustainable creative businesses. We provided not just capital, but practical business education, teaching artists how to market their work, manage their finances, and build real careers without depending on handouts. The program was an immediate success. Within its first year, we helped launch 30 profitable creative businesses. Real artists, building real careers, creating real value. No family bank accounts were drained in the process. My parents, meanwhile, had taken to social media to post about ungrateful children and how money destroys families. They shared lengthy posts about how they'd sacrificed everything for their children, conveniently forgetting that their sacrifices had been exclusively for Sarah's benefit. Their posts might have bothered me once, but I was too busy to notice. We were breaking ground on a community center in our hometown, a place where young people could learn business skills, get mentorship, and access resources to build their own success stories. The irony of it being just blocks from my parents' house wasn't lost on me, but it wasn't the point either. The community center would include a small business incubator, a financial literacy program, and yes, even an art studio. But this wasn't a space for vanity projects or endless finding yourself sessions. It was a place where creativity met practicality, where dreams were backed by solid business plans. Sarah, predictably, tried to position herself as the center's art instructor. Her application email was a masterpiece of delusion. As someone who has dedicated their life to pure artistic expression, unburdened by commercial success, I am uniquely qualified to guide others. The center's director, unaware of our connection, replied with a standard rejection letter. We're looking for instructors who have demonstrated both artistic skill and business acumen. Our goal is to show young artists how to build sustainable careers, not just create art. I kept that email too, not out of spite, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. The girl who was once dismissed as too practical was now helping others find the perfect balance between creativity and sustainability. My parents made one final attempt at contact, this time through their church pastor. He arrived at my office with a prepared speech about family reconciliation and Christian forgiveness. I let him finish before responding. "I've forgiven them," I told him. "Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing toxic patterns to continue. It means freeing yourself to build something better." He looked around my office, taking in the wall of testimonials from people we'd helped, the awards for business innovation, the photos of successful entrepreneurs we'd mentored. "They're proud of you, you know," he said. "They just don't know how to show it without asking for something." "That's the problem," I replied. They're not proud of me. They're envious of what I've built. There's a difference. As he left, I returned to reviewing applications for our next entrepreneurship cohort. One caught my eye. A young artist who'd grown up in a family that dismissed her business ambitions. Her portfolio showed talent, but it was her business plan that impressed me. She understood that art could be both a creative expression and a sustainable career. I approved her application immediately, adding a note. Your practical side isn't a flaw. It's your superpower. That evening, as I left the office, I drove past my parents' house out of habit. Sarah's latest installation cluttered the front yard. A jumble of painted furniture she called a commentary on suburban materialism. The foreclosure notice was barely visible behind it, but I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, no desire for revenge. Instead, I felt gratitude. Every dismissal, every criticism, every attempt to make me fund someone else's dreams had pushed me to build something real, something valuable, something that helped others build their own success stories. Living well isn't about revenge. It's about creating so much value that the past becomes nothing more than a lesson in what not to do. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing others how to succeed where your family expected you to fail.